Chernobyl nuclear reactor number 4 was a nuclear reactor located in Pripyat in present-day Ukraine. On April 26, 1986 at 1:23 a.m. Moscow time, workers at the nuclear reactor were nearing the beginning of an experiment to test the ability of the reactor's water cooling system in the case of a loss of power. About 56 seconds later, pressure in the form of steam built in the reactor until it caused the 1,000-ton lid over the reactor to explode off. This allowed massive radiation to be released in the air. As oxygen made its way into the reactor, a graphite fire began inside it. The chemical reaction caused by the fire caused another explosion, and allowed burning debris to land on top of its neighboring reactor, Chernobyl nuclear reactor number 3. The shift leader that night, Alexander Akhanov, didn't believe the reactor's core was damaged at the time. He died 15 days later on May 11th in Moscow, Russia. The fire debris from the explosion caused 30 separate fires to develop, and an alarm went off at the Pripyat fire station. At 1:45 a.m., firefighters arrived knowing nothing about what they've gotten themselves into, and thus they had no protective clothing. Driver Grigory Kamel later said, "We saw graphite lying everywhere. I kicked a bit of it." Another fireman picked up a piece and said, "Hot." Neither of us had any idea of radiation. After the firemen fought the fires, they were brought to the local hospital. Once the hospital workers learned of the radiation from the disaster, the firefighters were removed from their clothes, and they were thrown in the hospital basement, where they still are today, as seen in this video by YouTuber Veritasium. The next day, more emergency response teams arrived and evacuated the area around the nuclear power plant. These are some images showing what was left behind. On April 28th, an alarm went off at a Swedish nuclear plant after the soles of shoes worn by a nuclear safety engineer tested positive for radiation. The radiation was traced to Chernobyl, forcing Soviet officials to admit there was an accident.
От Совета министров СССР. На Чернобыльской атомной электростанции произошла авария. Поврежден один из атомных реакторов.
On May 14th, Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev spoke to the public about the incident live on television.
Добрый вечер, товарищи.
We were recently stricken by a disaster, the Chernobyl nuclear power accident. It deeply affected the Soviet people and disturbed world opinion.
The accident, he told his countrymen, has now claimed 9 lives and injured 299 others.
After the International Nuclear Event Scale was created in 1990, the Chernobyl disaster was found to have a rating of INES 7, the highest rating a nuclear accident can have. After the disaster, an exclusion zone was created around the power plant. This zone will not be able to sustain human life until sometime around the year 30,000. The lack of humans has allowed for forests to reclaim the land and animal populations to replenish despite the radiation. Animals such as elk, deer, boar, and wolves are growing at the same pace as other nature reserves in the region, showing that the radiation is not affecting animal populations.